Hello and welcome to episode 12. So, this is the final episode of season 5 of my podcast or video podcast, whichever version you are watching or listening to right now. So, thank you so much for getting to this stage with me. It has been so enjoyable from my perspective to come and talk to you each week about these things. That I am going to be writing another season, but there will be a short break. Now, once everything is published, you probably won't notice there's a short break anyway. But if you are watching this because you are on my email list and get this sort of every week to 10 days, there will be a little bit of a gap before the next one starts. So I'll be going and writing that. And today would normally be a roundup of the whole of the podcast episode so far. But that feels really massive, a bit overwhelming, and a bit like I would just be throwing lots of information at you. So if you haven't already listened to or watched the previous episodes, please go ahead and do so, because there's so much content in there and so much useful, valuable things that you will find really beneficial to identify, increase your awareness, and give you little tips and strategies and things that you need to do. And some of that is also about self-compassion, which seems to be the one part of the circle that is the big sticking point for most people. So what I wanted to talk to you about today, and I've got various notes around because this has come up in client sessions over the last few days, but also notes that I had made beforehand, and that is about stabilising your identity. So one of the things that I have acknowledged is that I dated too quickly between each of my relationships. I didn't allow enough time to really establish a strong self-concept before I would go on to the next relationship. And it wasn't always intentional. Like, I would maybe date somebody, but then the date would lead to obviously not just one date, and we would end up in a relationship. Because my self-concept wasn't very strong, I also didn't look for red flags. I didn't look, or if I did see them, I was like, oh no, I can change that and what have you. And obviously, really, the ideal is if you decide to get into a relationship again, that it's super easy, that there's just ease, that there isn't this game playing, there isn't this dysregulation of your nervous system whenever you're hearing from them or speaking to them. Like, excitement is one thing, but dysregulation is another. So realistically, don't date until you have established such a strong self-concept that actually anybody else coming into your life would just be an addition to it. They wouldn't be necessarily no, they wouldn't be the whole focus of it. So you still have you, and you take that real you into the relationship, which you're not going to be able to do until that relationship is really strong and established with yourself. So I was reading the other day about something that I always tell clients to do, but I didn't know that it was actually a method or a thing. So apparently there's this thing called the solo table. And the solo table is a practice that everybody should be okay with before they date. So I always tell my clients to date themselves, to learn how to be with themselves. I'm off next week on a break all by myself, well, with the dog, which I'm super excited about because I generally learn quite a lot about myself. And also because it's so important to keep that self relationship going. So the solo table is about being able to go to a restaurant, sit at a table, not have any distractions with like not scrolling your phone and things like that, and being able to have that time by yourself without feeling super uncomfortable. And when I first did that, I did feel quite uncomfortable, but over time I began to really enjoy those moments just for myself where everything else kind of stopped. It felt really, really good. So once you have established such a strong self-concept with yourself that you can spend time with you and not worry and focus on what your thought processes are and what's going on in your head and having loads of noise, but you can regulate and have joy in that moment, then once you've been able to establish that, you are in a position that it's all kind of tested your self-concept and you are able to move further forward. So all of the work that I do follows a pattern that is the same for everybody, no matter what. But how we go through the pattern is very different, depending on your personality, depending on your own story, depending on your learning preferences, depending on your lived experience. All of those are the bits that we tailor to make sure that it's working for you. So the first part that we do, by the fact that you even engage and watch and what have you, is that you have become aware that either you're in a relationship that is toxic, and or you don't have a strong self-concept, you don't have a strong sense of self, you don't like yourself as much as really you ought to. Like, there is nobody ever in your life who is going to spend as much time with you as you spend with yourself. So having joy in those moments is so important. Like, when you think about it from that perspective, you think, oh my goodness, if I'm not happy in my own company, if I don't have a strong sense of what I like, what I dislike, what my principles are, what my values are, what I contribute, where I am still learning, all of those things, like, how can you then have successful relationships with others when you struggle with yourself? And it was kind of a bit of a light bulb moment for me, that the awareness was that although I'd lived alone, I hadn't established that self-concept. I filled my life as much as possible with seeing other people and doing other things and going to these groups and what have you. And that would have been great if my focus and perspective had been slightly different. So the next part, after awareness and becoming aware that you don't have the strength in your relationship that you would like to have, is that you have self-compassion, the most challenging part. Like, based on your story and your experiences, of course you are in that situation. Of course, it stands to reason that if you were not supported when you were younger, if you felt rejected in any way, if you experienced bullying, all of these different things that can happen, and there are many, many, many more than those. Of course, it stands to reason that you really struggle with your self-concept, because perhaps you've never, ever, ever experienced it. You've never seen it role modeled. You've never had that support for yourself, or there has been something that has really knocked the confidence with that. But you are now in a position where perhaps you have got the awareness, you're working on the self-compassion, and you're like, I feel like I need to also be doing something, Sarah. So the thing that you would be then doing is accepting where you are at this crossroads, where you can make some new decisions and carve some new pathways. So now it's all about thinking about the direction that you're going in. So imagine yourself standing at like a crossroads, but maybe not just four paths. There are lots of paths that you can take. So obviously one option is to go backwards. I have gone backwards a number of times in my life. I've gone back to something, and my experience is it's never worked out long term. So I will always be moving forwards now. So I'm not going to go back into the same sectors. I'm not going to go back to relationships with people that I've had in the past. None of that. I am all set on moving forward. So behind me is not an option for me. And then you can take a detour, or you can make forward progress depending on which pathway you choose. And realistically, when you're at this crossroads, it is likely that it's become so painful for you now to be where you are, that the fear of moving forward with something different is significantly less than the fear of staying where you are right now. So this is an opportunity to think about, okay, and this is the way that I do it, is I think about the end and work backwards. It's called reverse engineering. And it is, for me, the most helpful. But just bear in mind, this is my strategy. There may be other things that work differently. But I think about what it is that I want at the end. And it's not the stuff. So I'm not thinking about, so if I was thinking about a career, for example, I don't think about what is the job, who am I working for, etc., etc. I think about who is the person who has got the job that I love. What's different from me now to her, and how can I insert that into my life now? So based on the vast majority of you are career focused women, perhaps you're wanting to move forward with your career, you would think about who that would be. Maybe you're thinking about who would that woman be who was having a successful relationship? How would she be feeling? What would she be thinking? How would she present herself? Because she's probably more confident than you feel right now in that environment. She is feeling inner peace and contentment and ease, things that you may never have experienced before in relationships, or if you have, they haven't been sustainable. So you might be thinking about, what does that look like? It might be opening a business. You can literally use this for absolutely anything where you feel at a crossroads. The premise is still exactly the same. And then once you've decided what the long-term thing is, you then need to look at what are the actions that I put in place to achieve that. And it all feels very strategic. I get that. But when you're at a crossroads, you do require a strategy. And if you are strategizing at work, then there's no reason why you can't copy that strategy across in terms of the elements of it and how a strategic plan works. There's no reason why you can't bring that into your personal life as well. And that's the point then where you've thought about what the end result is, you've worked out some of the steps, you've worked out what it looks like, so you can see how you might bring some of that into now. So maybe it's about how you hold yourself, maybe it's about boundaries with people, maybe it's about dating yourself, maybe it's about really learning who you are, maybe it's about getting some support to do that. But the next part is the bit that is the next kind of stumbling block, because it's change, and change is scary, and it feels a lot to make changes to your life at this point. It can feel a bit overwhelming. It can feel a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? So sometimes when I tell myself I'm going to do something, there is also a little voice in me that goes, don't tell me what to do. So rebellious, that's the word I'm looking for. So maybe you feel a bit rebellious about it as well. But all of those things are basically fear presenting themselves in different ways. So it's scary. It's scary making a change, but there are ways of managing fear. So I want you to imagine that fear is your alert system. It is just data. It is just information going, we're not wholly happy in this situation right now. And there will be physical symptoms that may come up from that. There will be thoughts, feelings, emotions, behaviors, all of those sorts of things will come out of the fact that you are scared. So it'll be things like, let's say, for example, that you have decided you want to start doing some things for yourself, but grow your friendship network as well. So you start to go to a hobby of some description. And then you go, oh, I'm so tired today, I'll go next week. And that's fear. That's fear saying to you, don't go tonight. I'm not psyched up for that tonight, and I'm going to really struggle. So let's not go. Because that part of your brain, your inner child that I refer to all the time, her job is just to keep you in the same place that you have always been. She has no desire whatsoever for this change. She does not want this change. She wants her familiarity, even if that's uncomfortable for your conscious mind, even if that's uncomfortable for you as you're in your life now. That is what she wants. That is her job, to stop you from making change, from stop you from doing new things. But what we end up doing is giving that too much credence. So we make that mean something. We make that super important to us, and we make it an authority in our lives. But fear is a child. Fear does not have the ability to cope with being in charge of this situation. So this is the point where you come in and you parent, reassure, reward, whatever, in order to get what you want. So this is about negotiation. You are negotiating with a child, and sometimes your process in that will change. So sometimes you're like, look, I get that you are scared about this. It's going to be okay. I'm going to be right here with you. We'll do this together. And then you can have some time with me afterwards to talk about how you felt about that. Or it will be, we're doing this. Let's stop. We're going to go ahead and we'll see how it goes. So, for example, when I started Zumba for about the first 5 weeks, I was constantly having dialogue with my inner child who wanted to get all of the steps right for all of the songs the very first time we went. Obviously, completely unrealistic, but that's what my inner child wanted. So for the first time, the first time was very much like she was quite loud. And I was like, I'd like to concentrate. We're going to get through this. We're not supposed to know it right now. I know you would like to know it right now, but it's going to take us a little bit of time. And we're moving our bodies and the music's good. So let's just do it. And she's just slowly started to calm down until in like the 5th week or what have you, she was like, oh, I'm quite enjoying this. So it's very much treating this part of you as a child. Needs to be heard, needs to be seen, but doesn't need to take control of the situation. And very much the clients that I work with have this in their past. Wasn't heard, wasn't seen, wasn't listened to, was dismissed. So one of the most important things you can do for yourself now is to hear and see yourself. Hear the fear. Don't be ruled by it, but hear it. And that is super, super important in you being able to progress forward. Because once you have the awareness, then you have some self-compassion, which actually is more of a seasoning in this recipe, because you don't go through self-compassion and then you're done. You require self-compassion all the time. Then you have the time and space standing at the crossroads to work out what roads you want to go on and whether going back to anything is valuable to you or not. Then you have reverse engineering, where you're working out where you want to go and the steps that you can bring in now to do that. And then the fear of the change. And that's the next big stage where you manage that fear, you manage that voice, you manage the circumstances around it and give her the time and space in order for you to move forward. And nothing will change at first. She will still be scared. She will still tell you, you'll still have physical symptoms. But what I'm asking from you is to trust me that this process works, because I've helped lots of people through this part. And it is trusting that the process works and you keep repeating it over and over and over. And some days you won't want to do the work. Some days you'll be like, I don't know. Today I will wallow. Today I will not move forward. And that is okay. That is absolutely okay. Self-compassion, remember, it's okay that today you don't want to move forward, but at some point you need to decide that you're going to pick yourself up, dust yourself off and go again. But creating that self-relationship through this process is one of the most valuable things that you will ever do for yourself. If you've got children, you'll be role modeling that for them as well, and bringing like really great humans who understand their own workings and how they manage situations. And that is just a really beautiful thing to be able to do as well. But also other people will realize. So, if you are progressing on your career pathway, it will be noticed at work. Maybe you keep your career situation and your personal life very separate, but maybe your friends will notice, maybe family members will notice that you are growing. Not everybody will like it, but that is a conversation for another day. So thank you so much for joining me whenever you have throughout these series of videos and podcasts that I'm doing. It is such a blessing for me that I get to do this. I'm very grateful that my experiences have led me to being able to talk about it and help other people through it as well. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you when the next series is written and ready to go. Take care.